Hi everybody, here's a little demo and talk about lettering. First, let's start with some lettering do's and don'ts. I'm going to detective school. I'm going to detective school. What do you notice between the two, right? Those hyphenated words, if you can avoid them, and it's so easy to do, avoid them. Don't let those hyphens make it hard for the reader to read your words. Just a little bit of planning made me realize that I am going to. Detective is just about the same length as going to, and school underneath. So you plan out in pencil before you start inking your letters. These were drawn freehand, but in a moment I'm going to show you how to draw lettering guides so you can make them look nice and sharp. The other thing I want you to notice about these two balloons is that both of them are symmetrical. You really want to avoid a situation where you have, let's say, I am going to detective and school ends over here with a big white space there. Symmetry is very useful. If it's up against the side of the panel, you might have it flush right or flush left. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Well, you can't breathe here because the artist has not left enough white space around the edges of the words. Better to leave a little too much white space than not enough, because the eye needs to be able to immediately absorb those letter forms. Speaking of absorbing letter forms, let's compare these. I can't, I can't, I can't. Do you see how the letters run into each other here? It's hard to see these as separate words. This is a little better, but this is ideal. The letters within a word can be kind of crunched together and then leave a little extra space in between the letter forms, in between the words rather. So extra space between words, and then push the letters in a single word together a little more than you would normally. Where you place the balloon, this is a little more about balloon placement, but placement is really vital. I could talk more about this, but I just want to mention this one thing. Compare this with this. Here, I see a lot of beginning cartoonists thinking that you have to throw the whole balloon in there, and look how much real estate is lost. If I anchor it to the corners of the panel, it frees me up to show the comet coming in, the superhero going after it, and oh, hey, look, it's a city. The tool that you're going to draw your guidelines with is this handy dandy little Ames lettering guide. I keep this guide right by my drawing board even when I am not lettering, because it can do all sorts of nice little things, such as draw parallel lines vertically, draw parallel lines horizontally, and if I need some diagonals, I got a diagonal built right in. Before you use your lettering guide, you've got to anchor down your ruler. Spread your fingers and press them down. You don't want this ruler to budge when you're drawing your guidelines. Now, the guidelines. There's lots of holes in here for your pencil to go into. Ignore this top row, this second row, and this third row for the time being. This bottom row is the row that you're going to use to make your guidelines for your lettering. Just to give you an example, I'm holding my ruler down tightly. There are my guidelines. Top of the panel, space. You see how it gives you lines for the tops and the bottoms of your letters, and then this space in between. Take a look closely now. You're going to use the bottom row again. This is the bottom of your lowest line of the letters, your lowest guideline. You're going to draw this line, skip this one, and do this one. Then that's the top and the bottom of your lowest line. Then this is your space, bottom of the top of this middle line. Skip this one. Draw this one, second space. Draw this one, skip this one, draw this one. Top guideline. It looks a little complicated, but once you do it a few times, you'll find it's not so tricky. Now, the other thing that this little device does is it rotates. So if I turn it, let's turn it exaggerated, now compare the lines that I can make. Hold down that ruler. With the turn of the dial, the lines get farther apart. Depending on how large you're making your original artwork, and how much space you want to use within the panel, you just tweak that dial until you get something that feels about right to you. Here's the lettering exercise that I'm going to give to you. It reviews at the top which holes to skip, and then gives you an example of some very nice lettering. Reminds you to line up the left edge of your guide along the left panel border. So I have this nice straight line down here for this example of little Abner, and I line my guide against the left-hand side. While holding the T-square ruler with one hand, insert the pencil in to hold and guide across the paper. So I'm holding it tight, and I'm using my pencil back and forth. Flip guide over and use diagonal edge to create parallel guidelines for italics. We talked about this before briefly. When you want to emphasize a word, you can do it in italics, and you can also use a heavier pen. Notice also in this example here, all of the letters that are coming out from the television set are done in italics. The regular dialogue is all vertical lines up and down. Look at this, sob, how he's turned this into a little active word by placing the letter forms like that. So to get those diagonals, the artist lines it up and then draws a bunch of parallel diagonal lines. So in your example here, you're going to line it up, the edge up there, and just draw some when I'm doing italics, I draw just a bunch of guidelines, italic guidelines. Okay. So you're going to have to draw some guidelines here across, and I'm going to figure it out for you what to set the dial at. My guess is that it looks like it's about at a 5. Let's see if that looks about right. That's close. It's pretty close. Close enough, I think, for an example. And now, the top dot here is going to line up with the top of the frame. So, I get that dot there, and now I get the edge here parallel to the edge of the frame. Make sure, yep, it's running right across there. And now the top line of type. Skip that hole. Oops, not holding it still. Then the space in between. And then skip that hole. And then the space in between. and then skip that hole. But wait, there's only 3 lines of type, and I need 4. 5. So what do? I bring it down, bring the lettering guide down, and align that top dot as though it was the top of the frame. And I double check and make sure that, yep, there we go, I got it perfectly. And now I can draw, skip that hole, my next 2 lines. I roughly pencil in my letter forms. Uh-oh, I didn't leave enough space. That means I've got to make these letters a little closer together. And now, rather than penciling this whole thing, I'm going to show you using my microns here. Okay. Do you see how I'm making my letters out of separate strokes? There we go. Looks like there's a little grease on this paper or something. So, and then for my boldface, I'll use something like this. Okay? So that's the basics that you need to know for lettering. It's not the easiest thing to do, and some of you are going to be very frustrated by having to do all of this work, but I think that it's really important to go through this experience. If nothing else, then it really gets you conscious of the letters, how they form words, how the words fit in the balloons, and how the balloons fit into the design of the panel. It's all part of the important recipe for telling your story. Good luck.